We've obviously had a lot of big injuries at the running back position, but now we've had major developments with some young players at the running back position, meaning we need to update our rest of season rankings for the running back position in 2025 fantasy football. And I'm doing everything I can to get us ready for week 6 and beyond to make us win championships this year. So please go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now get into our first tier of guys right here. I think it's kind of obvious at this point that Jonathan Taylor needs to be at number 1 and Bijan Robinson is at number 2. Now with Jonathan Taylor, this is a guy I will say that has come out and totally surpassed my expectations this year. Not that I didn't know Jonathan Taylor was a great player. Everybody knew that. But obviously this offense as a whole has surpassed expectations. And I think he's clearly benefiting from a very efficient offense with Daniel Jones, unlike he would have if it was Anthony Richardson, because he's also getting pass catching upside that he wouldn't have gotten if it were Anthony Richardson as well. And to be clear, that pass catching upside is nowhere close to someone like Christian McCaffrey, who we'll discuss later. Jonathan Taylor is still capped in the receiving department, but it doesn't matter when this guy is averaging 5.1 yards per carry on 94 carries so far this year. He has done fantastic. He's finding the end zone. He looks like 2021 Jonathan Taylor all over again. So Jonathan Taylor, to me, is a league-winning back at number 1. And Bijan Robinson at number 2. This is excellent as well. It's easy to just kind of forget about Bijan just because he was on a bye week, but probably not that easy if you have him, because you know the impact that it just left on your team in week 5, not having him for 1 week. That was a big deal. I mean, Bijan Robinson has looked fantastic as well. And the bottom line is with this guy, him alone sees more production in the receiving game than Jonathan Taylor does. Bijan Robinson has truly evolved into an enormously important receiving option in Atlanta's offense. That's what's helping average 22 fantasy points per game in a full PPR format, because the guy is averaging a ridiculous 15 yards per reception. That's insane for any running back. So the fact that he's doing that, 18 catches for 270 yards, this offense runs through him. They know that in Atlanta, so you can clearly have a top 2, top 3 back in fantasy when you have Bijan Robinson. Now, I recently made the switch. I decided to put Jahmyr Gibbs over Christian McCaffrey at number 3, while McCaffrey is at 4. And I'll tell you the reason I did it is because watching that game on Thursday night, and to be clear, it's always been like this with Christian McCaffrey, but the problem with it is that Kyle Shanahan can't help himself when it comes to McCaffrey. He just feels the need to use him at every level of the game, and of course, he's a dominant pass-catching back. But what will happen, and I'm very concerned of this, is that Achilles tendonitis flares up and he gets hurt because of all the work they're giving him this year. He already hasn't been very good in the ground game. He hasn't had a rushing touchdown yet, but of course his pass catching upside is elite. Now Jahmyr Gibbs, I prefer him right now because Jahmyr Gibbs is on a better offense, number 1. He is more explosive, number 2, and I don't think we've seen the best from Jahmyr Gibbs. I think the best is yet to come with Jahmyr Gibbs in particular, because this guy, they're keeping him a little bit more fresh. So as we go throughout the year, I think McCaffrey probably goes down and Jahmyr Gibbs probably goes up in importance in this offense. Not importance, just overall efficiency in this offense, because Gibbs is a young player who's being used and used wisely in his offense, whereas McCaffrey, they're riding him until the wheels fall off. That gives me pause with McCaffrey and gives me lots of upside with Gibbs. And at number 5 to round out this first tier right here, James Cook still belongs. I get it. Last night, it was a bad performance, and it looked like a lot of James Cook's old games where he just kind of falls out of favor if a game script does not fit him. In this game, he had 15 carries and 1 total target. Now, that volume is the lowest it's been all year, and it was still not very low. So the floor on this guy, I think 4.9 fantasy points in a full PPR format. I don't think that's realistically going to be the case every single week. I think his floor most of the time will probably be around 10 to 12 points. And of course, his upside and consistency has been pretty much through the roof so far. So I don't see any reason to really get worried about James Cook. He's still on a dominant offense with Josh Allen at quarterback. I'll still take him as a top 5 guy inside of tier 1. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Devon Achane at 6 and Josh Jacobs at 7. Now, I said this before weeks 5 actually started. With the loss of Tyreek Hill, Tyreek Hill was going to leave a void in this passing game that I believe Devon Achane will be tasked with trying to utilize. And I think we saw that already in week 5. 7 targets, 6 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown, in addition to 10 carries. Now, that 10 carries number, that's pretty low for Devon Achane, and the efficiency, particularly at 1.6 yards per carry, was low as well. We know Devon Achane's ceiling is 30-plus points. He hasn't gotten it yet. He's gotten 26 points week 2, but I still view Devon Achane as a top-tier running back in fantasy. The only concern I have is that I've seen his displeasure with this team. He was posting some cryptic messages after week 5, so maybe they trade him, but it's hard to kind of see a worse situation than Miami, but there is worse out there. So I will say he is not a tier 1 guy, but clearly at the top of tier 2 in my opinion. Josh Jacobs is at 7. I think that Josh Jacobs is, again, easier to forget because he's on a bye week in week 5. But I think Josh Jacobs, the people who had him on their team probably noticed it, because Josh Jacobs is a guy that is a workhorse back on a really good offense in the NFL, and he's getting in the end zone at the red zone. He will continue to be utilized as the red zone back, and he's also going to continue to get work out of the passing game as well at 14 targets in 4 games. That's a pretty good number right there in 4 games. That's almost 4 targets per game. So Josh Jacobs, to me, the only problem I'm having with him is that his efficiency is lower this year. So I do see maybe issues with that, but just being used at the goal line and the workhorse role that he has, it's not enough for me to not see him as a top 7 guy. Saquon Barkley's at 8 to round out this tier. And I will say this, Saquon Barkley, I'm in this predicament right now because I like Saquon obviously a lot. We know the talent is great, but at the same time, man, on a per touch basis this year, it's not like he's been very good. Saquon Barkley has had 83 carries, and he's averaging 3.2 yards per carry. Now, because of the offense that he's on with Philadelphia and the talent that they have and the red zone trips that they frequently make, he's still going to be a top 10 back. And I do think he has clearly room to improve as the season goes along, but I'm not there at that point where I don't think anymore he's a top 5 back. Until I see something different, he's in top 10 for sure, but as of a top 5 back, I think a lot of people are disappointed and they will be mad at me to see how low he's ranked this week. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Javonte Williams at number 9 and Ashton Jeanty at 10. Now, I said this with Javonte Williams. I've been late to the breakout party on this one. It's legit. I mean, Javonte Williams is the number 3 back in a full PPR format this year with 20.7 fantasy points per game. He looks like rookie Javonte Williams, actually better. It's really mind-blowing. 5.7 yards per carry and 5 rushing touchdowns this guy has had. Now, I think it's real because this offense in Dallas is running well right now. Dak Prescott looks very good, and I just think Javonte Williams is clearly the lead back. I'm kind of done doubting it at this point because when I look at someone like Ashton Jeanty, I warned people of this last week. The problem with Jeanty is not the player. Ashton Jeanty is a great player, but this offense with Las Vegas is atrocious. Not only Geno Smith is being bad right now, he's bad, but this offensive line is bad too. So Ashton Jeanty is this, I've said this kind of before the season started. The problem I see with Jeanty is that he is going to get a Najee Harris workload that he got his rookie year in Pittsburgh, but the efficiency is not great. And it's not bad, 4.3 yards per carry, but I will say this, I think it's probably not going to get too much better throughout the season. So yes, I love Ashton Jeanty, the talent. I think he's going to be a top 10 back, but I really don't think that he's that great of an RB1 in fantasy. Probably low-end RB1, high-end RB2. And Kyren Williams to round out this tier at number 11. We saw with Kyren Williams on Thursday night. I think Kyren Williams is obviously still a really good fantasy back. Top-tier RB2, low-end RB1 in fantasy football, which is good because you drafted him to be an RB2. Kyren Williams has been very efficient on the ground. 82 carries, 4.5 yards per carry. The problem is that he hasn't gotten in the end zone. as many times because Blake Corum definitely has been involved. Now, I think maybe that shrinks a little bit because of the fumble issues that Blake Corum has seen, and I do think Kyren Williams continues to be involved in a top-tier offense. The only thing I'll caution with is I'll say I think last week against the San Francisco 49ers was a little bit of a mirage. He got used out of the slot a bunch and became Jahmyr Gibbs all of a sudden. I don't think that continuously happens on a weekly basis, so I don't think he's a top-tier RB1 like Ashton Jeanty, but a top-tier RB2. And I will say this, these are my rest of season rankings. If you want to see my top 200 rankings on a weekly basis, you can do that by utilizing the premium subscription on fsroundup.com, where you will have access to my weekly rankings every single week, top 200 plus. And in addition, you'll also get access to the waiver wire tool, which is saving teams this year. The amount of times people have said people are pissed off at me because I keep taking their players before they even get up in the morning, it's hilarious to see, because that's what we built it for, so you could beat everybody else who wakes themselves up at 3 in the morning to go grab the rest of the guys available after priority waivers run. Our system automates that process, so you leave pissed off people and guys looking like this.
This is Ted. Look at him. Ted desperately needs to pick up a new running back, or his fantasy team is toast for the 3rd year in a row. Don't be Ted. Use Fantasy Football Roundup to automate your waiver pickups and rest easy this season. Huh. Look at him.
Now, jumping down to our next tier, I've got Travis Etienne at 12 and Quinshon Judkins is at 13. Now, I think a lot of people are going to be really annoyed by me not having Judkins higher. And I'll say this, Judkins looks great. Like, this is not a Judkins player issue. I've got concerns with Judkins still, though. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities, and I've been saying this for weeks, that he gets suspended at some point. I mean, we saw this with Rashee Rice right before the season started. It looked like he wasn't going to be suspended. Then all of a sudden, we woke up one morning and he was suspended for 6 games. So I just think that Quinshon Judkins is still facing that possibility and probability. But if he was not going to get suspended, he would be higher on the list than Travis Etienne. Because my problem with Etienne is that this coaching staff and the front office, they did not draft him. Now, I will say he's clearly been working with Liam Cohen. Like, that's not the problem here, and I don't think it starts to become a problem. But if it does become a problem, I would not be surprised at all to see them move more towards Bashul Tutin in this offense, who's already involved. But Etienne has been averaging 6.1 yards per carry. He's been extremely efficient. I think that he's going to continue to be that guy for them, so I've got him as a top 12 back for now. Now, at 14, I've got Amarian Hampton and 15, Bucky Irving. Now, here's where we get into problems, right? Because both these guys are injured right now, and as of the time of this filming, we don't know enough about their timelines. Amarian Hampton went down on Sunday with an ankle injury, but after the game was over, he was seen in the locker room in a walking boot. So this is not an ideal situation at all. And I think we were seeing the effects of having Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater down for that offensive line with the Los Angeles Chargers in that Week 5 matchup versus Washington. So I'm a little bit worried about Hampton, and I think he'll probably miss a game or two at the very minimum. It could be a maximum of 6 games. Who knows yet, but if he plays, I still want him here at 14. And same with Bucky at 15. Like, he would be higher if he already wasn't a big red flag. I actually have him more red flagged than Amarian Hampton, because anytime I hear that a player is getting multiple opinions on an injury, I'm already very, very weary. Like, that's not a good thing to hear, because typically that means you didn't like your first opinion and they said you're going to be out for a long time. So he's in a walking boot apparently, and he's already got a different injury as well. He's banged up right now. So again, if he plays, he's going to be much higher than 15. But right now, with the uncertainty, I will put him at 15 for now. Dropping now to our next tier, more uncertainty with this tier. Derrick Henry at 16 and Cam Scatterbo at 17. Now, Derrick Henry is in this very strange predicament right now, because if you look at the numbers, I don't want people to go too crazy with Henry, so I want to show you the numbers. Derrick Henry is averaging 5 yards per carry right now. He looks good still. Like, on a per-touch basis, he looks like old Derrick Henry. The problem is, and make no mistake about this, It's the Ravens' game scripts that aren't going his way. Derrick Henry is at his best when they have a lead and he's able to bleed the clock and just trample the opposing defense. They haven't had that opportunity, and they probably won't until after their bye week. So for another week, Henry probably won't be very good. But I will say this, when Lamar comes back and their schedule lightens up, which it will, Derrick Henry is going to resurge. So I'm not putting him much lower than this. This is my lowest number that I will put Derrick Henry at right now because obviously it's been bad, but I think it will get much better moving forward. And then a guy like Cam Skattebo, listen, I like Cam Skattebo. Like, I liked him coming out of college, but I've got a couple issues with this one. Number one, he sees a ridiculous amount of work right now since Tyrone Tracy Jr. has been out. And I'm not saying that I think Tracy is going to reclaim his spot again, but I do think that Cam Skattebo is small enough to where he gets injured. I do think that, and I don't want to project injury. I don't wish injury on the guy, but he's getting a lot of work, and he's not very efficient with it either. So you couple that with a bad offense and a bad offensive line for the most part, I think the Giants are not going to be able to make Cam Skattebo last if they continue to use him like this. So I've got him down here at 17 because I don't think the offense is good enough to be able to utilize him appropriately as they probably should throughout the rest of the season. I think they'll ride him into the ground at some point, and that won't be good. Kenneth Walker's at 18 and Chuba Hubbard at 19. Now, Kenneth Walker, I've been saying this for weeks, and people are agreeing with me. Like, you can't disagree with me on this. It's a split backfield. And what we saw in week 5 was Zach Charbonnet got in the end zone. That's the separating factor of who does better in fantasy that week. Because Kenneth Walker is not seeing enough work to be able to really capitalize as a top-tier running back. He's been very efficient, 4.9 yards per carry this year. He's gotten 3 red zone trips, but he's not involved enough in the passing game, and he does not have this full backfield, and he won't as long as Charbonnet is fully healthy. So I think that Kenneth Walker, you've just got to put a cap on this upside here. And Chuba Hubbard at 19, listen, he's also in this predicament. I don't know what the real story is going to be with his injury moving forward either. And I will tell you this, even though they did sign him to a new deal this offseason, the way Rico Dowdle looked and how dominant he was as a back for the Panthers in week 5 was like, I don't know how you could ignore it as an offensive-minded head coach, Dave Canales. Like, that guy has to be in part of your game plan moving forward. Chuba has not looked that good, even close, all year long. Chuba is averaging 4.1 yards per carry. Not a bad number, but Rico Dowdle just averaged like 6 yards per carry. Like, he was dominant, and I don't think you can overlook that as a head coach. So with the injuries, with Rico Dowdle really breaking through, I do worry about Chuba Hubbard a little bit, but I've got him at 19 because I still do think that he's a good player. Now, dropping down to our next year, I've got J.K. Dobbins at 20, and Alvin Kamara is a problem at 21. Now, with J.K. Dobbins, I think there's plenty of positives here, unlike with Alvin Kamara. First of all, J.K. Dobbins has been a really good player for the Denver Broncos. And I said this before week 5. Like, he still is the number 1 running back. You can't take away a blowout game from the Cincinnati Bengals and say, oh yeah, R.J. Harvey, he's here now. R.J. Harvey disappeared once again in that game versus the Eagles. J.K. Dobbins has been too good for them to not utilize. 5.2 yards per carry on 77 carries, and he's got 4 red zone trips this year. Like, he looks like a really good player right now. So I do put him down here at 20, not because he hasn't looked good, because I love the offensive line and he looks good. It's because I do think RJ Harvey will get more involved throughout the season. So I do want to minimize the risk of having him too high on this list and having people go trade high for him. I don't think he's that guy. I think that J.K. Dobbins is a descending asset at some point in the year, but we're obviously not seeing it yet. But Alvin Kamara, I'll tell you this, like, there's a legitimate problem here with this one. Alvin Kamara is the running back 24 in full PPR. Let me restate that. 24 in full PPR. Full PPR is where he's supposed to dominate. And I said this leading into last week. The problem with him is we're not seeing enough pass catching upside. In years past, he would have like 40 targets by now. Through 5 weeks, easily 40 targets. He has 21 targets and 17 catches for 77 yards. First of all, that's not good enough production on 17 catches. And second of all, that's lower than it always has been. Alvin Kamara is averaging 3.9 yards per carry, and he's been doing that for several years straight now. So if you're not giving him the pass-catching upside, that's a problem for his fantasy upside. This is a sell situation. I don't want much more to do with Kamara unless the outside chance the Chiefs trade for him, for example, which is possible. But as of right now on the Saints offense, I don't really want much to do with Kamara, unfortunately. Jordan Mason's at 22, and DeAndre Swift is at 23 to round out this tier. And I've said this for weeks. With Jordan Mason, I think that even when Aaron Jones comes back, Jordan Mason will be utilized as the top-tier running back in this team. Like, Aaron Jones, they proved a point by signing Jordan Mason when they traded for him to say, we don't really want you as the lead back always. We like you, and we like you as a pass catcher, and in certain situations, we want to keep you fresh, though, because you've been really injured. That's where Jordan Mason comes in, and he was already doing that when Aaron Jones was there, but without Aaron Jones, he's had really good games and some bad games. Jordan Mason is not that great of a player, so I don't want him that much higher than this, but I do still think his role is going to be utilized very well throughout the season to be a top 25 guy moving forward. And then I've got DeAndre Swift at 23. And listen, he just hasn't performed up to my expectations, but he's probably performed up to the expectation of most people in the industry. I was on an island with DeAndre Swift. I liked him more than most people did. But DeAndre Swift, the reality is, man, 3.3 yards per carry. He's just not been that efficient on the ground. And in the receiving game, he's actually been good because he is a good receiving back. But he's just not seeing enough work on a weekly basis to consistently be a really good back in fantasy when you're averaging 3.3 yards per carry. So maybe he gets better. I don't know. I just doesn't feel like there's much more upside than a top 23 running back, and even this may be high for some people. Dropping down to our next tier, Breece Hall is at 24, and Bill Krosky is at 25. Now, here's two guys with two different tales, right? Breece Hall is an extraordinary talent, and I will die on that hill. Like, Breece Hall's talent is phenomenal. And we saw it last week just versus the Dallas Cowboys without Braylon Allen there to take more touches. Breece Hall is a very good back. He's averaging 5.3 yards per carry this year, and he's averaging 8.8 yards per reception. That's a very high number for running backs when you're getting 24 targets, and I think that he's a really good back. The problem is, of course, that Breece Hall is not on a good offense. They're going to be very streaky, and I think that Breece Hall could easily get traded, which would be better for him because it's hard to get much worse than the Jets situation. But as of the time of this filming, man, things just look so bleak in New York. And it wouldn't surprise me if they just tried to get rid of him or bench him outright because that's how dysfunctional the Jets are. But Bill Krosky, on the other hand, emerging talent, not as talented as Breece Hall, but on a much better offense in a much better situation. I did say this heading into Week 5. We haven't seen Ja'Cory Krosky marry yet with Jaden Daniels. We haven't seen it, so I want to see it. And he ended up being phenomenal against the Chargers defense of all defenses. This guy is averaging 6.6 yards per carry right now, and he's averaging 10.8 yards per reception. He is clearly their lead back, and I think they're going to utilize that moving forward. Chris Rodriguez was basically a no-show, and he was a problem for Ja'Cory Krosky through the first couple of games. Now with Jaden Daniels back, they've seen the breakout, and they're going to utilize him more. Now, I think that Jeremy McNichols will still be a thorn in his side in the pass-catching game sometimes, but I think we've seen the breakout, and I think it's up from here, but I'm not going to put him this much higher because we still don't know what they're going to do realistically with him. David Montgomery's at 26 to round out this tier, and listen, what we saw in Week 5 is going to happen a couple more times, but what we saw in Week 4 will also happen too. He just doesn't have good enough of a workload to consistently be that good in fantasy because Dave Montgomery is matchup dependent, and this offense is extraordinarily so. It will depend on just the matchup, what situations they put him in, and if he could break off a big run. Dave Montgomery clearly is a good enough back on a really good offense, though, still. So I still would have him over our last tier of guys, which is mostly filled with junk. 27 is Chase Brown, and 28 is Tony Pollard. Now, Chase Brown and Tony Pollard both share a common denominator here, which is they're on horrendous football teams. Chase Brown can't get anything going. Now, Chase Brown, I will continue to say this, I'll take him inside the top 30 just because he's seeing the workload. Chase Brown has 65 carries this year in 5 games, and he's averaging 2.5 yards per carry, but he's also got 22 targets through 5 games as well. So the guy has almost 90 opportunities on the year in 5 games. Like, that's a really good number. So I'll continue to want him because they will have better matchups than what they've had over the last 3 weeks. So I'll take Chase Brown over Tony Pollard, who I think actually has a real threat now of Tyjae Spears. I think Tyjae Spears gets more involved as the season goes, and Tony Pollard loses out on some of the work that he's been having. I mean, the guy's had 82 total carries through 5 games and another 12 targets on top of that. That's almost 100 opportunities in 5 games. But the problem is the offense sucks. So even if they cut his workload by 5 opportunities per game, that's enough to really, really destroy his fantasy value because his entire season has been predicated on volume and volume alone, much like Chase Brown. Now at 29, I've got RJ Harvey, who I do want to see break through, and Jaylen Warren is at 30. I'll take RJ Harvey over Jaylen Warren because I think that Jaylen Warren is a problem in Pittsburgh because I don't think he can hold up to a full 3-down bell cow role like they've been wanting to give him in Pittsburgh. And I think that RJ Harvey is a really good player who will continue to get involved as the season goes on. The guy's running behind a top 2 offensive line in the league. He looks good in basically all work that he's gotten so far. He's been very efficient. He's got 7.3 yards per reception and 4.8 yards per carry. So I think that as time goes on, they'll continue to get him more involved over time, and I think that he is a better fantasy asset than someone like Jaylen Warren, who has been good from a fantasy points per game perspective this year, but the efficiency is so low, and I just don't see him being able to hold up for a full 3-down bell cow role like the Steelers have wanted him to do because he's already been injured. So I would rather take the upside shot on RJ rather than having someone who's maybe possibly a descending asset with Jaylen Warren. So let me know what you think of these rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see Week 6's buy low candidates this week, click on this video right here.